what? If people would want to believe that I assault my wife at 4'7" and she's 5'6".
They were part of something millions grew up with, but their endings were very different. Fame introduced them to the world. What came after was rarely seen. This video looks at the final years of 8 television actors who defined the 1980s, stars who once lived at the center of prime time, but whose later chapters unfolded far from the glow of studio lights. Some struggled, some reinvented themselves, some faded quietly. All of them reveal what happens when an era ends and the industry moves on. The 1980s were a unique moment in television history. There were only a few dominant networks, and when a show became a hit, it became a shared national experience. Families scheduled dinner around it. Kids repeated the jokes at school the next day. Actors didn't just gain recognition, they became fixtures in American life. But by the early 1990s, cable had exploded. Audiences fragmented. Storytelling grew edgier. Sitcom formulas shifted, and the actors most closely tied to 80s television suddenly faced a new landscape that didn't always have space for them. Let's begin with one of the most famous child stars of the decade. Keycap 1 Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman became a phenomenon as Arnold Jackson on Diff'rent Strokes. He was small in stature, but enormous in presence. His timing, confidence, and unforgettable catchphrase made him one of the most quoted actors of the era. At his peak, Coleman was reportedly earning more than $100,000 per episode, extraordinary for a child actor in the early 80s. He appeared on late-night talk shows, game shows, commercials, and magazine covers. He wasn't just popular, he was everywhere. But Coleman was born with congenital nephritis, a kidney condition that required frequent dialysis and multiple transplants throughout his life. The illness stunted his growth, and as he aged, Hollywood struggled to see him as anything other than the child audiences remembered. Financial mismanagement compounded the problem. He sued his parents and business advisors over missing earnings and won a multi-million-dollar judgment. But legal battles and medical expenses drained much of what remained. By the late 1990s and 2000s, Coleman's appearances were sporadic: reality shows, minor roles, public appearances. He often found himself defined by nostalgia rather than opportunity. In 2010, after suffering a fall at home, he died at 42. The child who once commanded millions of viewers spent his adulthood fighting for stability in a world that had moved on. Dana Plato. Dana Plato was the older sister figure on Diff'rent Strokes. Viewers watched her mature on screen, embodying warmth and relatability. At her height, she was one of the most visible teen actresses on television. But after leaving the show, Plato faced the harsh reality many young stars encounter: typecasting and limited roles. The industry that had showcased her weekly offered few adult opportunities. Personal struggles intensified the challenge. Substance abuse issues and legal troubles became tabloid headlines. A 1991 robbery arrest became a defining media moment, overshadowing her earlier work. In interviews, Plato spoke about wanting to rebuild her career, but the path was steep. In 1999, she died of an overdose at 34. For many fans, it felt like watching a bright childhood memory fade too soon. Conrad Bain played Philip Drummond, the steady patriarch of Diff'rent Strokes. While the children drew much attention, Bain anchored the series with quiet authority. Unlike some of his co-stars, Bain transitioned into a more private life after the show ended. He had already built a long career before the series, including stage work and earlier television roles. He largely stepped away from the spotlight in his later years, occasionally reflecting on the show's cultural impact. He passed away peacefully in 2013 at age 89. His story stands in contrast, proof that not all final years were turbulent, though they were often quiet. David Hasselhoff. David Hasselhoff became the face of futuristic cool on Knight Rider. As Michael Knight, he symbolized the high-tech optimism of the decade. The show was syndicated globally, turning him into an international icon. He doubled down on that fame with Baywatch, which became one of the most-watched shows in the world. At his peak, Hasselhoff's image defined action television. But sustaining that level of stardom is rare. As trends shifted, leading roles slowed. Personal struggles became public. Viral moments altered how audiences perceived him. Instead of retreating, he leaned into reinvention, judging talent competitions, embracing self-parody, and continuing a music career overseas. He never vanished, but the dominance of the 80s was impossible to replicate. Point 5. Erin Moran. Erin Moran became beloved as Joni Cunningham on Happy Days and later starred in Joni Loves Chachi. Though her career began in the 70s, her prominence extended strongly into the 80s. She represented youthful charm and innocence. After the shows ended, steady acting work became scarce. Financial hardship followed. At times, reports indicated she faced housing instability. Public attention faded. In 2017, Moran died at 56 from cancer. Many were surprised by how removed her later life seemed from the bright spotlight of her early career. Richard Mulligan. Richard Mulligan brought eccentric brilliance to television, first on Soap and later on Empty Nest. By the late 80s, he was one of TV's most respected comedic actors, winning awards and praise for his performances. But in the 1990s, health challenges began limiting his ability to work. He stepped away from acting as cancer treatments intensified. Mulligan passed away in 2000. His later years were marked by illness rather than applause, a reminder that fame offers little protection against time. Michael J. Fox. Michael J. Fox rose to prominence as Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties, embodying the ambitious, sharp-tongued youth of the Reagan era. While he achieved major film success, his television roots defined the decade. In 1991, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at just 29 years old. He continued acting for years, often hiding symptoms. Eventually, he became one of the most prominent advocates for Parkinson's research, launching a foundation that has raised hundreds of millions for scientific advancement. His final chapter isn't defined by decline, but by purpose, turning adversity into impact. 8. Meredith Baxter. Meredith Baxter portrayed Elise Keaton on Family Ties, representing intelligence and calm in a rapidly changing cultural climate. Behind the scenes, Baxter later revealed she endured domestic abuse during her marriage and struggled with alcoholism. In later years, she became open about her journey, discussing sobriety, identity, and resilience. She continued acting and became an advocate for personal empowerment. Her later life demonstrates a different kind of final chapter, one of survival and reinvention rather than disappearance. The bigger picture. What ties these stories together is not tragedy alone, it's transition. The 1980s television machine created enormous fame, but limited flexibility. Actors were often inseparable from their characters. Once the shows ended, reinvention required navigating an industry that no longer centered around them. Some faced health battles. Some endured financial hardship. Some embraced advocacy. Some quietly stepped away. The spotlight is powerful, but it is rarely permanent. Legacy. Taken together, these stories reveal how quickly television fame can shift and how enduring its cultural impact can remain. Reruns still air. Streaming platforms revive old episodes. New audiences discover these performances decades later. But behind every laugh track and theme song was a real person whose life continued long after ratings declined. The 1980s gave these actors extraordinary visibility. Time gave them very different endings. And sometimes, understanding those final years, the struggles, the reinventions, the quiet resilience, tells us more about Hollywood than the height of fame ever could. Because when the cameras stop rolling, life keeps going.